Hi everyone, Aaron here for Zollotech, and today Apple released iOS 15.2 RC2. This is available to developers and hopefully public beta testers by the time you're watching this video. And a release candidate is the final version of the update that should release to the public should there be no other issues found. And so with a release candidate 2, Apple must have found an issue and then released this update. And this came in at 391.2 megabytes. That's on my iPhone 13 Pro Max. Now, Apple did not release this for any other devices other than iPhone 13 series phones. So iPhone 13, iPhone 13 mini, iPhone 13 Pro, and iPhone 13 Pro Max. They didn't release this update to any other phones. And they only released one other update along with this update, and that is macOS 12.1 RC2. So they didn't release an iPad update, a watch update, or TV update, just iOS 15.2 RC2 for iPhone 13 Pro and 13 series in general. Now let's talk about the build number and then talk about what's new. So we'll go to Settings, then we'll go down to General, then About. You can see the build number is 19C57, and the previous build was 56, or what people currently have if you don't have a 13 device with the latest update on it. And in this particular update, there is one change that I was able to find, and that is to the modem. So under About, you have a modem update on the 13 series devices. And I would think that this has to fix the issue with switching between 5G. And the reason I say this is I was placing a FaceTime call earlier this week when I was on RC1, placing a FaceTime call, and when switching between 5G UC and regular 5G, the call would just drop. When I forced it to go to LTE or 4G, it worked just fine. So there's an issue between switching. I don't know if it's resolved just yet, but it looks like I'm picking up UC here without a problem, and my data is working okay. So going into things like music, maybe going to browse, it seems to be working okay when I'm on UC, although sometimes it's a little bit slow, as you can see here. So there's definitely some issues with the modem. Now, this is specific to T-Mobile with UC, whether or not it's fixed on, say, AT&T or Verizon or other places. It's hard to say, as it takes a few days to know if that switching's fixed. However, you did see that it loaded, but it took a while, so maybe it had to switch, and Apple's working on that issue. As far as any other updates, well, I haven't found anything else, and I even have my friend Steve Mosier take a look at the code, and it does not appear that there's any major changes in this update with RC2. It looks like it's just a fix for the modem and maybe some additional bug fixes that they didn't mention. But other than that, there does not seem to be any features or changes or anything else that anyone's been able to find. It seems to be just related to that modem update as far as I can tell. So they typically find something major and push an RC2. However, they normally push it to all devices. So this is the first time I think we've seen in a very long time where they only push a release candidate to a few devices. It's a little bit different. And again, it's available to macOS as well. Now, other than that, I did have some issues that I was going to mention in the follow-up later this weekend. And typically I run a YouTube community poll where I ask how it's going for you. So this will still pertain to RC2 as well, but in general, we'll just comment here, and then I'll use that information to do a follow-up a little bit later with more information on how it's going and whether or not it should be ready this coming week. And as far as any other issues I was having with it, I had settings lock up on me where it completely froze already on RC2 or on RC1. Hopefully RC2 fixes it. And also I had an issue with the Google Smart Lock. I've mentioned this before with the app, and when it triggers Bluetooth, it seems to crash. The app has not been updated in about 6 months, so maybe Google needs to update that app, but it allows you to log in with two-factor authentication to Google services. So hopefully they update that, as it does not seem to work at all, at least on 13 series devices with Smart Lock and that app with the latest version of 15.2. So hopefully they fix that. Now, also regarding bugs, Apple does mention in the notes that there are known issues with streaming music that could result in higher CPU usage and cause faster battery drain. This has been there for a few betas and still remains in RC2 as well. So it doesn't look like they've fixed that in this particular update, as they still mention it. So that's there, unfortunately. Hopefully they'll fix it in maybe iOS 15.3. Now, as far as when to expect 15.2, well, based off what they did last year with 14.3, I would expect a release either on the 13th or the 14th. Last year, they released it on the 14th, so that was a Monday last year, though. So we either could see it the 13th or 14th released to the public and be available to everyone else. And then typically they'll switch to a new beta after that. Last year, we got it on the 16th, which again was was a Wednesday. So maybe we'll see a release on the 13th with a new beta, maybe iOS 15.3 Beta 1 on the 15th or 16th. I would expect something along those lines, as it seems to make a lot of sense. Now, as far as battery life, I wanted to share my current battery life and also performance, as I did run a Geekbench test on this as well. My battery health is at 100% on this device. It's only a few months old though, so that makes sense. And over the last 10 days, we'll take a look at yesterday. I had 2 hours and 50 minutes of screen on time, 7 hours and 12 minutes of screen off time playing music. The day before, 4 hours and 20 minutes, 5 hours and 58 minutes of screen off time, and 50% of my battery. So I'm easily getting through a day. Typically by the time I go to bed, I have over 50% of my battery life left, and I really don't think about it. It does really well with these updates. I think the RC is much more stable, and performance seems to be pretty good. Other than that lockup I mentioned on RC1, I haven't had that here, so it seems to be pretty good. Now, as far as the benchmark scores, we'll go into Geekbench 5, and I did run it twice just to see if it would be any different, and I scored 1,730 for single core, 4,754 for multi-core. If we take a look at the history here, we'll go back, go to the history, and you'll see today, we'll scroll down here, December 10th, you'll see the different scores. So we had 1,730, which is a little bit higher than we had with RC1. So I ran it a couple times there, and then 4,754, again, higher than previous versions, other than maybe Beta 4, which seemed to be a little bit higher with multi-core, but that was after a few days. Since this is just out, that's pretty impressive, I think. Now, after running the benchmarks and everything else, the phone does seem to stay nice and cool. So I really haven't had any issues with the phone getting hot or having any issues with it getting too warm. Although it does heat up normally when doing intensive tasks, it seems to be doing just fine. And so that's really everything in this update. Hopefully we'll see it released to the public here in a few more days, earlier next week, and then we'll move on to a beta after that. But let me know if you've found anything else in this particular update. I'd love to hear from you in the comments below. And if you'd like to get your hands on this wallpaper, I'll link it in the description like I normally do. If you haven't subscribed already though, please subscribe. And if you enjoyed the video, please give it a like. As always, thanks for watching. This is Aaron. I'll see you next time.